Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Exactly 1 year ago, on this, I think it's on this very day, 17 people lost their lives in Parkland, Florida. It remains the deadliest school shooting in United States history. I think it's good that we take a look at it because it began with a young man who had a long and troubled history. In 2012, this young man's middle school suspended him for fighting. The next year, his mother called the sheriff's department to report that he had anger issues and had thrown her against the wall. Logs of 9/11 calls reveal a more disturbing pattern of violence in the home. Between November of 2008 and June of 2014, his mother made 15 separate 911 calls to report disputes and disturbances. In February of 2016, a neighbor reported to law enforcement that an online post of the young man with guns seemed to suggest that he wanted to shoot up a school. The young man eventually commits an assault at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School and leaves the school on February 8, 2017. 3 days later, on February 11, 2017, he buys an AR-15. He was able to buy at least 10 weapons before the tragedy. These were troubling signs. The signs, however, did not go unnoticed. In September 2017, the FBI was alerted to a comment the young man made beneath an online video that said, quote, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter," end quote. In November of 2017, a family member actually asked law enforcement to take this young man's weapons in light of his mother's death. Local law enforcement also received a separate tip that this young man was, quote, "a school shooter in the making." In January of 2018, the FBI got another tip about this young man's gun ownership desire to kill people, erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts, as well as the potential of him conducting a school shooting. Just a month later, he walked into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School armed with an AR-15, took 17 lives, and wounded 17 others. As a nation, we were all devastated. After each one of these terrible shootings, the question remains of how we face the next day. It was the survivors of that shooting, the students, teachers, and parents, who answered that question. They rose up and said enough. They asked us to take action to stop mass shootings from ever happening again. And just a few months ago, on September 7th, 2018, Elia Eastman, a Parkland student, declared, and I quote, "The youth is urging our society to recognize the depth and seriousness of our gun violence epidemic in America," end quote. It's because of those voices that today I am introducing the Extreme Risk Protection Order of 2019. We know that families and friends are in the best position to recognize early signs of trouble before tragedy strikes. To solve this problem, California enacted a law in the aftermath of the Isla Vista attack that enables family members of law enforcement to ask courts for orders to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. Modeled on existing domestic violence laws, when a judge believes there's sufficient evidence that someone is a danger to themselves or others, the order temporarily prohibits that person from purchasing or possessing firearms or ammunition. The Extreme Risk Prevention Order Act of 2019 would create new grants to incentivize states into taking similar measures to prevent gun violence and enact these sorts of laws called red flag laws. I've said repeatedly, I thought that when the shooting took place at Sandy Hook, that would be the moment Congress would step up. Unfortunately, despite our efforts, gun safety legislation was not enacted. I am grateful that last week our chairman, Chairman Graham, said he intends to hold a hearing on red flag laws. As a nation, we should not have to endure one more shooting we know could have been prevented. As communities across our nation mark the first anniversary of the Parkland tragedy today, let us remember the hope that these young students have brought to all of us. As the elected leaders of this body, we must take steps never to forget what happened at Parkland, Isla Vista, Sandy Hook, Las Vegas, Sutherland Springs, Columbine, and countless other places across our country where gun violence has needlessly taken lives. We've seen the cost of inaction, and I hope my colleagues will join me in remembering the victims of this attack and support this legislation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.